and it has gone up to the Court of Appeals and back again. And I've had 5 separate psychological evaluations. I've been doing urinalysis.
Do you have to pay for those psychological evaluations?
I only had to pay for one of them.
And why so many? I mean, if I don't get it.
Well,
I mean, are they just, is it like a fishing expedition?
pretty much. And there's one of these tests that they'd like to administer. It's not the MMPI, it's another one. It's the problem with it was pointed out to me by Dr. Samuel Roll is that 90% of the people who take this personality test score it as an indication of some level of personality disorder. So once they give you this, I believe it's the Minnesota multiphasic, whatever, they can find something wrong with you, and then they can run with that.
Okay, so your story is that these children were taken into custody. Was there anything that happened to any of the children, or was there any kind of physical abuse or anything that was found? No
bruises. In fact, this was even in the report. None of the children had any cuts or bruises. It was all he said, she said allegations, and the fact that children went to school with dirty clothes and things like that. They made a mountain out of a molehill, and when I managed to discredit most of their allegations at the beginning, the case moved on to allegations that the psychological test said I was a narcissist and suffered from obsessive compulsive disorder. And then finally it degenerated into the social workers saying, well, we told him not to bring sweets to the visiting room, and he keeps bringing sweets to the visiting room. So in 2006, Tommy Jewell terminated my parental rights.
Tommy Jewell terminated your parental rights?
Right. This was a week before it was revealed in the media that he himself had been accused of domestic abuse involving children, which was information which was well known within CYFD, but was not made public until he tried to become the secretary of the department itself.
So CYFD tried to terminate your parental rights. That
was their objective, and it took them 4 years almost to.
And did they have a psychologist that confirmed any kind of psychological disorder?
Well, actually, this is part of the story. The doctor said I had features of a narcissistic personality disorder.
Which is totally different than actually diagnosing you with those features. Okay, so then they sort of degenerated into saying that how dare you bring a Snickers bar to your children? What the hell is wrong with you, Lance?
Have no empathy for the children's needs.
You should be on your computer watching child pornography like these sons of bitches at CYFD.
And so the social worker took the report, and in her
Yes, I'll get a call. I'll get a
interpretation-
knock on my door tomorrow. Well, you bastards, I don't have any children for you to steal anymore. Sorry. I'm a little upset.
The social worker took the report and omitted the designation of features, and then told all of the other people involved in what they call the treatment team, psychologists, therapists, each of the children gets their own therapist, blah, blah, told them that I was diagnosed with a type 2 personality disorder. And then they asked for referrals from all of these people. Well, do you think the children should be returned to their father? Well, based on the information that we have, the father is a disordered personality. Many of them recommended no.
Well, your children were with foster care?
Well, initially they were placed in regular foster care, and then their half-aunt, my ex-wife's sister, stepped up and became the foster parent.
Okay.
And so they have been placed in her home for the last several years.
Okay, so they've been in a family situation.
Right.
And so now you've hung with it. You haven't let them get away with it.
Right, because the trial that lasted until 2006, the most important opinion was that of the court-appointed 11706 expert, Dr. Candace Kern, and she said that I was an empathic father, and that if the children's relationship with their father would be severed, it would do each of them permanent, long-term harm to varying degrees. And this is not my expert, this is the court's appointed expert opinion. Now, the legal standard to terminate parental rights is clear and convincing evidence of either parental unfitness or that the parent-child bond has deteriorated. So armed with this report by the court's experts, I figured it was a slam dunk. And so it was quite a shock to me when I heard secondhand even that Tommy Jewell had ruled that to terminate my parental
Well,
rights.
tell me a little about your background. Do you have any history of domestic violence? Do you have any history of crime? Do you have any history of drug abuse? Do you have any history of beating your children? Do you have any history of doing anything to your children? Who are they protecting?
Well, this is another irony, is that the social worker wrote her initial report, said this family has a history of domestic violence.
And okay,
The
go
truth
on.
of this was that years earlier, when my wife was running around using cocaine, I had gone and gotten a restraining order against her.
So
There's
saying
a history of domestic violence.
The history of domestic violence was you taking appropriate action to protect your children against a parent that was abusing narcotics. And they are
Right.
using something that you did to appropriately use the system to protect the children. They're now using that against you. I think they don't have anything.
Right, the statement itself is not false. This family has a history of domestic violence.
Were you supposed, Lance, let's be clear. Were you supposed to drop dead and get out of and leave CYFD? What do you think what were their intentions with your children? They didn't have anything on you. Don't they have a mandate? Don't they have a mandate to actually preserve the family?
Okay. We've only got a couple minutes left.
Go on.
But the crux of the issue is that the Court of Appeals overturned the termination of my parental rights in February of 2008.
They overturned, okay.
Yes. And in August, and they gave 6 months for the reunification, unless there was clear and convincing evidence of an extraordinary circumstance that would prevent this. So in August, I came on the show and I told the story, and the hearing was held, and the judge in the district court reaffirmed that we're going to go ahead with the reunification. Well, just a few weeks ago, we had a permanency planning conference at which I was finally given a date, an outside date for my children to be returned. And that date could be moved up. I'm not supposed to give any dates. It's not public information. But we finally, since 2002 to 2009, have a resolution to the issue.
So you actually had a favorable ruling from the Court of Appeals.
Yes, they said they weren't going to deal with the issues of judicial impropriety, et cetera. They only focused on the clear and convincing evidence standard. And they said clearly the state had failed to prove its case.
Did you have an attorney?
I had several over the attorneys. I had initially I had a court-appointed attorney who wasn't doing much. The case was going against me, so I found Mr. Peter Everett, and I hired him for a number of years. But then when it went to the Court of Appeals, I didn't have the money to do that. So now I have Nancy Simmons, who is my court-appointed Court of Appeals attorney.
Okay, and she was, and their basic ruling was that they couldn't find any evidence to
Right.
terminate your parental rights.
There was no parental unfitness. There was no deterioration of the parent-child bond.
And they
No.
confirmed this, so the court got it right.
Yes.
Well, there goes. Now what are we going to do? No, it's good. It's good that they finally found a parent. They were willing to listen to what you were saying, and they did the right thing. Okay, our guest, thank you, Lance. Lance, we appreciate you being on tonight. Lance Clafetta, a success story in New Mexico courts. Thank you for listening, everyone. On You Judge, we'll be with you next Tuesday. Have a nice night.
Cool. Thanks, Dale.
That was good, man.